This Easter Sunday, like no other Easter we've had, we are called to practice resurrection in the midst of how we continue to manage through and survive the COVID-19 pandemic that's still going on. Resurrection. On this Easter Sunday, we hear the gospel story from Matthew of resurrection. Matthew 28, verse 1 to 10. What I love about resurrection is that all four gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all mention the first story of the resurrection is the encounter of the women who experience, witness, and encounter the risen Christ at the resurrection. You have to understand that this is mind-blowing. This is amazing that that part of history has survived because at the time of Jesus, women were considered property. They didn't count. It was a large patriarchal system. And that story alone, to survive all of these 1,000 years as the first story of the resurrection in all four Gospels, is amazing. Today in Matthew, we hear that Sabbath first day of the week, Mary of Magdalene and the other Mary, who's named in the Gospel, go to the tomb. It is the job of the women to anoint the body, to take care of the dead in that ritual of dying and burial and death. Mary of Magdalene was there and saw the horrific crucifixion. She encounters in this gospel, suddenly there was an earthquake, like a flash of lightning, and an angel rolled back the stone and sat on it and announced to Mary that Jesus has risen. Do not be frightened. I know you're looking for Jesus the crucified, but he is not here. He has been raised. So go tell the disciples that he has been risen and go to Galilee to meet him. And as they go back towards the disciples, suddenly they encounter Jesus, who says to them, peace. And Jesus again says, go tell my brothers that I have risen and meet me in Galilee. That's Matthew's version of the resurrection. We hear it again in Mark chapter 16, Luke chapter 24, and John chapter 20, similar versions. Women, give witness to the resurrection. This earth-shaking, mind-blowing, profound news is that profound gift of unconditional love cannot be bound by death. It cannot be bound by a stone that's rolled over. And for us today, it cannot be bound by a virus. Love breaks through all of that. God's unconditional love breaks through all of that. One of my favorite icons as a mode of prayer is of Mary witnessing the resurrection. And this one, if you can see it, was written by Sister Mary Charles McGough, who is a Benedictine sister. In this, Mary of Magdalene witnessing the resurrection to the disciples in Jerusalem. One of my favorite icons from those four gospel stories. Mary, a woman that had no basic rights, considered property, was overwhelmed by this resurrection of love, witnessing that to others. She had the courage to go tell the disciples. What about us for today? How do we witness resurrection in our lives? One of my favorite poets is Wendell Berry, who's a writer and poet and a farmer. He had a line in this phrase that I was praying with this week about how do we practice resurrection? Because this week, as we move into the Easter season, 50 days of celebrating new life, how are we, all of us, women, men, and children, called to practice resurrection, witnessing to this great, profound, unconditional love that moves us to love all people? How do we practice that resurrection? Wendell Berry says this: in an excerpt from his writing of the Mad Farmer Liberation Front. So friends, every day do something that won't compute. Give your approval to all you cannot understand. Ask the questions that have no answers. Put your faith in 2 inches of humus that will build under the trees every 1,000 years. Laugh. Be joyful, though you have considered all the facts. Practice resurrection. We are called to practice resurrection, that deep, unconditional, profound love that we may not fully understand, that we may never fully see, love that takes root in us and that we are called to share no matter where we are in life. Practice resurrection. Happy Easter, everyone. Amen.